Okay. So coming into Genesis chapter 3, Bereshit 3, we're going to go from verse 8. It says, they heard the voice of Adonai, God, walking in the garden at that time in the evening breeze. So the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Adonai, God. Okay, so again, let me finish the verse. Among the trees in the garden, hiding from God. Good idea, bad idea? Okay. Why don't you also see the Father's heart in this? He knows what's happening, and yet he still continues to come down and wants to walk with man. Emmanuel is the heart condition, okay? They hide themselves among the trees. What tripped them up? It wasn't just a snake, it was a tree. It says, Adonai God called to the man, where are you? Now look at the way Father does this. He knows you've sinned. What does he do? He asks you a question. When Yeshua is looking at a situation, what does he do? He asks a question. Right?
But why? You really know the Samaritan woman.
Yeah, exactly. So when I know the situation and I ask a question, what I want to do is want to bring you to the conclusion where I'm sitting. And it's something that rabbis do really, really well. So if I want to get you to the point of crucifixion, say, or to understanding the crucifixion, you're going to go, why did Yeshua die for you? You're going to say, my sins. I'm going to go, why? Why? You sin, correct? So why does he love you? Why does he want to get rid of your sin? Why?
Reconcile with him.
It's a personal relationship.
Why?
I was kidding because he loves us.
Well, you've already said he loves you, so therefore he wants to reconcile to you. Why does he want to reconcile to you?
It was his initial plan.
So what I really want to get you back to is the reason for the crucifixion is a Genesis fixing. But I can make it about sin, or I can make it about in the beginning. You with me? So depending on the point I want to make, that's the point where I'm going to stop asking questions. Okay. So he says, where are you? He answered, I heard your voice in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. He said, who told you were naked? Question. Have you eaten from the tree which I have ordered you not to eat? Question. The man replied, the woman you gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit from the tree and I ate it. All right? So we go, I want to look deeper and deeper at the situation. I asked you who told you were naked, and you told me Eve did it. Interesting. So the reality is not, how did you know you were naked? I'm like, how did you come to know that you were naked? And remember, nakedness in the Hebraic idiom means, how did you come to know your shame? Right. So he goes, oh, it was Eve's fault. She was the one who gave it to me. The woman who gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit of the tree and I ate. Adonai God said to the woman, what is this you have done? Question. The woman answered, the serpent tricked me, so I ate it. Isn't this typical of man's problem? Why are you acting this way? This and this and this and this. Why did you respond like that? It was that person, it was this situation, it was that thing. When are you going to get to the point where you're going to go, Remember what I said to you guys? If I'm the problem, that's the part where I go to God and I say, Father, this is not of you, I need you to get rid of it. Take this thing from me, breathe new life into me, so that thing will no longer be my problem. Transform me so that I can become more like you. Until you surrender that peace, you will never get rid of it. Right? He needs to get you to a place where that sin is not a problem for you. Not that that sin ever disappears to be or stops being sin. It will always be. You know what I'm saying? If I've got a problem with alcohol, I need to get to the point where I can sit in front of an alcohol, any type, and not have it affect me. The old Vince couldn't say no. New Vince says, that doesn't bug me at all. Now, don't misuse what I'm saying to go say the power of the mind means I have to go sit in the bar and use all of my mental capacity. This is a miraculous thing that only God can do. You become a new creation, you don't get tripped up by the same things of old. Adonai God said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all livestock and wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and eat dust as long as you live. I will put animosity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. So many people will point this to be one of the first messianic prophecies. There's going to be an issue between your seed and her seed. So now you're going to see this parallel. Once you've eaten of that fruit, you ingest the seed, and that seed is what you produce. Okay? Now we've got this fallen seed of man, and we've got this demonic or Satan seed.
Does that indicate that Joshua actually has its own descendants?
That? You're sure?
No, Joshua
Oh.
has his descendants, he's got seed.
No, it's generally pointing to, again, type of picture. So when Yeshua rebukes some of the Pharisees, what does he call him? Who is your father? Your father was a murderer from the beginning. He was a liar. He was sons of Satan. Doesn't mean that they were physically from that lineage. It means you're acting like him. It's just like when we get spiritually reborn, we need to be as Abraham, our father. Right? So why? Because we need to have faith like Abraham. Okay, so it becomes part of that picture.
But it does say between your descendants and her descendants.
Yes.
Like as if it's
a physical thing.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual. Because he's dealing with the two different trees. You're going to see that actually runs through allegorically and through the entire time. So Jacob and Esau, whose seed were they physically?
Yeah, they were both.
No, they were both brothers, but yet all of us spiritually, we're talking about two very different animals here. See what I'm saying? So when we get to Ishmael and Isaac, we also say, well, physically she was from an Egyptian, but also daddy was still Avram. Isaac. So we can't go into the case of, this means now it's physical and therefore. And that's me pushing an agenda because now I want to have physical lineage, and therefore, if I want to be of the true lineage of Messiah, actually him and Mary Magdalene got married in secret, and now we have children and we have Messiah walking among us. Right? Hebraisms, pictures. He's trying to tell you something. You're going to produce of the like kind. And he will do what?
Crush your head.
Yeah. And Satan will do what?
Crush your head.
No, Satan will bite bruise the heel, and you will? Okay, so to bruise means, or it's this idea of to overwhelm. So when he nips at your heels, the point of it is trying to overwhelm you. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
Constantly.
Feeling confused, feeling fearful, feeling this. Maybe it's like those fiery darts that he's shooting at you from a distance, just while he's nipping at your heels, trying to get doubt to flow into you, and you feel like you can't do it.
Why did Yeshua use the example of a serpent and dove when he sent out his disciples? Why a serpent?
Probably because of what's happening here as an Eden reality. Do not be deceived. But it pops up again like that in Torah in different ways. So I don't think that all snakes are the devil. Okay? Part of creation. I'm just making the point because some people get to that point. Okay? All right? And he says he will crush the head. And that also can be translated as to rub away. So your headship or authority that is trying to get me to be overwhelmed, generally how does Satan overwhelm you is he gets you to focus too much on self. You're a sinner, you're broken, you're this, you're that. What does Yeshua do? He erases your sins so that you don't have a problem. So it's an interesting parallel between the two. Okay? One, he's trying to destroy you, and there's always going to be this push and pull between man and Satan. But Yeshua, ultimately, he is going to be the one who's going to come and deal with his authority, his headship in a sense. Okay.
So when it says he shall crush your head,
Yes, it's
you're talking about?
probably Yeshua. It's prophetic because it's now a case of he singular. So we're talking about descendants and descendants having animosity between each other, and now we're talking about him coming and crushing your head.
He will
So
crush.
the he is Yeshua, will crush the head of
Satan.
or the adversary, the enemy.
That's it.
And you shall crush his heel. Isn't that a picture of Yeshua's heels being pierced?
Part of. We could probably look at that. We could look at it in that sense as well. Okay. Right. Okay. Where are we?
So the you there, it's referring to us.
He will bruise your head and you will bruise his heel. No. You will bruise his heel is he will bruise your head, as in Satan, as in Yeshua, and you, Satan, will bruise his heel. Probably talking about that crucifixion. Like nails into it.
What I quite that I was noticing before is the capital E.
Yeah, that's
And you will bruise his heel. It's a capital in Afrikaans translation.
yeah. It's written in because there's no capitals in Hebrew.
Yeah.
So, but yes, it kind of helps you with the interpretation, pointing to which I correctly believe is Christ. Okay. So he goes, to the woman, he said, I will greatly increase your pain in childbirth. You will bring forth children in pain. So this is going to be a reality. You brought death in. How are you going to deal with death? You're going to bring life. Right? And it's going to be painful, and it's going to be sore, and it's not going to be lacquer, and you're probably closer to death than you are at any other moment. In a normal natural cycle of natural events, you are closer to death when you're bringing life into the world. It's a dangerous thing, but this is the cost. How do I reverse what you have done? Listen to the next part. Your desire will be toward your husband, but he will rule over you. Now, this is an interesting one. All right? So remember, the desire for Eve was look at the fruit. Remember, this is part of the curse, i.e., corrective action. Corrective action. So Eve desired the fruit. She wanted to become like God. She thought about it and she went out and grabbed it. So he says, you're not going to desire the fruit, you are going to desire your husband. In a sense. Now, there's two ways to interpret this. So I'm going to give you on the one hand and on the other hand. Yeah. So this is where some things become fun. He says, look, your love now needs to be turned, instead of focusing on yourself and what you can get, needs to be turned to your husband. Right? But there's also, this is when you probably get it right, but not always the case. Listen to what happens when we get it wrong. Go to Genesis, I want to say 4 verse 7. Could be horribly wrong here. Yes, 4 verse 7. Someone read that for me?
If you're doing what is good, shouldn't you hold your head high? And if you don't do what is good, sin is crouching at the door. It wants you, but you can rule over it.
Okay. So sin crouching at the door in Hebrew, its desire is for you. Is that a good thing? So your desire for your husband can also be you're crouching at the door.
Let me see what's
Okay.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Let me So he's saying the corrective statement or the fall or the curse of what Eve has to deal with is because you brought in death, you're going to go through pain, but you're going to bring in life. Okay? From one point to the next point. Says, because you desired the fruit, now your desire is going to be for your husband. Because he was Captain Hesitant, he wouldn't have touched it if you never told him to. Right? You with me? Okay. So that should be the corrective action. But the way this word desire works is sometimes your desire for him will be in a negative way. So instead of taking your frustration out on Satan or the fact that you were the one who misguidedly took the fruit, your desire will be like sin crouching at the door, ready to overtake your husband.
Take hold of the husband.
To rule over. That's why the addendum there says, and your desire will be toward your husband, but he will rule over you. Whether you like that reality or not, ladies, that is simply part of the fallen issue. Not because we're better, but because we need to be in correction.
Part of the punishment.
You can be honest. It's frustrating sometimes waiting for your husband to get the click. We're slow. We're probably not processing on the same level you're at. But that now becomes part of your corrective action. You're running at 400 miles a minute and he's saying, hang back. Now God says, instead of running ahead, you're going to have to wait for him. But what I'll need you to hear in it is that I'm going to get you to wait for him so that you don't run ahead and trip yourself up. Does that make sense?
I've got a question about the childbirth.
Yeah.
It says, I will greatly increase your pain in childbirth.
Yeah.
So does that mean in the beginning there would have been pain, but now it's just more?
Probably a lot more than what it should have been.
So it wouldn't have been painless?
I don't think so. Okay. So now verse 17. To Adam he said, because you listened to what your wife said and ate from a tree about which I gave you the order. You are not to eat from it. The ground is cursed on your account. You will work hard to eat from it as long as you live. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat field plants. You will eat bread by the sweat of your forehead till you return to the ground. For you were taken out of it. You are dust, and you will return to dust. All right, so part of the curse.
He says that you're going to die now.
Okay, well, the death was sort of secured in the beginning, right? He says, if you eat of it, you will surely die. That once you touch it, you will become guilty, death will follow. So why now am I dealing with ground? How did, right.
Now you have to earn a living, and it's not going to be easy by the switch of the ground. Yeah, lots of thorns and thistles that you
Deal with.
get over, to deal with.
Something that was going to easily produce and you had dominion over, now you're going to have to wrestle.
And to fertilize the ground.
You're going to have to work the ground. You're going to have to deal with those thorns and thistles. And I want you to think in the back, we've got the first Adam, which is Adam in Genesis, mankind, the first of God making man. And we have Yeshua, second Adam, right? God breathed man. We have both issues dealing with trees. First Adam eating from a tree, other one being put up on a tree. Brings a curse in, thorns and thistles. What was on his head? Right. So it's like the tree is being put back on the fruit, or the fruit is being put back on the tree. Everything that was fallen by here, Yeshua, in a sense, is taking upon himself so that he can then rectify the situation. You with me? Okay? Now,
So the ground is also reading?
It will be eventually. This is why in Revelations it will say new heaven, new earth. Why? Because everything that was perfect is now no longer. Why do we have a list of unclean animals in Leviticus?
They're not perfect anymore. Nothing is.
Because this is of something that we've done. You see, when we talk about the fall, it is not just about man. It's fallen creation that's the problem. So when you talk about Yeshua coming to be crucified, it is not just, even though that's a big part of it, reconciliation of man to God, but it's also rectifying everything that we broke. This is a complete redemptive plan. How do I get everything back to the way it was? Now, I needed a man. Well, a man came in and he broke everything. Now I need a man to redeem it. You following the logic? Leslie? You're good.
Yeah, no, I'm just
Processing.
thinking about the fallen.
Yeah, this is some interesting things that we have to look at when we talk about the fall. Okay, a couple of things happen. Introduction of sin to humanity. Okay, before that there was no sin. Now all of a sudden we brought it in. Okay, we have all of a sudden brought in man's guilt before God. He walked with him, creation, all the rest of it. Nowhere did he feel afraid of God. Nowhere did he feel guilty before God. Nowhere did he feel shamed. After the fall, now all of a sudden I've got these emotions that I have to hide from him. I don't want to talk to him. Where before we had a nice open relationship and there was no issue. How many times do we sit and we think, and maybe in our fallen self, and when we do something wrong, we want to hide away from God. We don't want to pray. We don't want to talk to him. We don't want to do whatever. You're making the same mistake. You want to hide from God. God's sitting there going, what did you do? Talk to me about what you did, and then we can rectify the situation. All right? We've brought in God's judgment on man and nature. Everything now is broken. Right? Everything is now is in the fallen creation. You've brought sin and affected everything. Now he has to rectify everything. There's now separations in a sense. Okay? Now all of a sudden we've got you who have eaten of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, and we're going to separate you. They're going to kick them out the garden in a bit, and so on. And we are going to start to see, like I've been mentioning, that law of like kind, different seeds in the text, but it's going to be a representation of people. The next story we're going to get up to is Cain and Abel.
So he actually kicked them out the garden, but then he kicked Satan out with them.
Let's read, shall we? So it goes, the man called his wife, in your translations, Eve, but it's Chava, all right? Which again comes from the word Chaim. So Chava means life, all right? It says, because she was the mother of all living, Adonai God made garments of skin for Adam and Eve and clothed them. All right? So here all of a sudden when they get, what we created was fig leaf scenarios. Okay, what does God do? Rectify that scenario. Okay, well generally you don't just remove the skin from any type of animal. So something obviously has to die so that I can take off the skin and then I can create a covering. Just listen to the wordplay. Covering in Hebrew is kapera. Kapera is the same word you use for atonement. So when you're saying that he brought a covering, an interesting wordplay on this is Noah. Noah creates an ark and he covered the ark with pitch or tar. That word for cover the ark was he created atonement. So what does that help you understand? Something has to die to rectify your temporary covering and give you a more permanent solution.
That needs to be stopped.
He sets up the whole atonement idea from here going forward for them to go, I was just supposed to look after these animals, but now all of a sudden they're dying to cover me. I caused the death. And he wears a reminder thereof. Just like Yeshua will later have to become our kapera, our atonement.
I'm sorry, but where does it say he killed an animal?
Well,
He was killed.
I said it's probably, something will probably have to die before you take its skin
Yeah,
off.
but that's an implied decision by us.
So how else would you take his skin?
He created the animals, he created the people, he created trees, he created skin.
Okay, so you would say,
Kill something to give us skin.
well, what I'm saying is,
Understand?
yeah, I'm with you, and I can understand your logic how to get there.
But we were talking earlier about we should not add things
Hmm.
that we think to the sentence.
What I see running right through the text is that to cover my sin, an animal has to die. Correct? What do I do with the hide of a sin offering? Do you know?
I'm still with the assumption that something had to die to give us skin.
Well, some people believe that the animal was maybe just lying there anyway, or maybe he spoke it into creation. What I'm saying is pointing out probably more a sacrificial system than anything else. Right? And you can go with that, or you can say, no, I don't think that. I really don't mind.
But I don't think
Yeah, I just,
Mhm.
so what I would say is,
Mhm.
he didn't say that he gave them clothing, he gave them skin.
yes. Which goes back to my earlier statement about the trusted light, which gives you
Yeah, but
skin.
But the thing is, they knew, okay, let me just, my logic is they knew, they saw they were naked, so they started to give fig leaves to cover their nakedness,
mhm.
and that was inadequate.
Mhm.
And that is why Rabbi Elohim used skins of an animal and go with what,
That's the problem.
You-
Of an animal is added by man. It wasn't.
okay,
It's not.
he used coats of skin. There's no reference that this is a coat of skin. This is just skin. That doesn't make sense to me because, okay, if there wasn't a skin on their bodies, what did they hang the fig leaves on? What did they weave the fig leaves on? Was it like on the supernatural light that was just
No, the light
surrounding?
was gone. So that you should know.
Okay, so the light was gone. What did they hang the fig leaves on? How did they get the fig leaves
Well, they were bone.
on their bed? Just
They were
so,
bone.
so is it just the skeleton and they put fig leaves on the skeleton?
Well, they were covering what was previously not seeable. They
Then-
felt naked. But my question is not this. My question is to stay with the Bible, and the Bible never says an animal was killed. But I've heard many congregations and people say an animal was killed, and this is my problem.
Okay, well,
If an animal was killed, if an animal was killed, I'm good. But if you don't find
it's actually in the Hebrew itself. The word that they use there is or, and the translated or in many times the body, the hide hides leather. So the word is used a number of times, implying that it's leather or
Yeah,
animal
so
skin.
with that, I have no problem. But the killing of an animal is where my problem lies.
Okay, so but how do you get the skin of an animal without killing it?
You are still saying of an animal.
What is a hide?
It's a skin
Okay, from what?
from God.
Okay, so you're saying that he created a covering.
If we associate the animal with it all the time, but it's never stated.
Yeah, but no,
Then
what
we are adding words.
I hear what you're saying. We have to be cautious of that, but he literally uses the same word a number of times as leather, as in from an animal, in the Hebrew word.
Yeah,
So
but-
if it didn't come from an animal, your one application is that he created a skin to cover them. Okay. Another application is, if we follow the lexicon, is that it's a leather covering, which he got from an animal. What I'm saying is,
you see,
no, it has to be,
animal.
yeah, but that's what the word means. If I say cover yourself with a hide, would you say it's not from an animal?
No, but I would go out and kill something to do it, right?
What I'm saying is,
All right, but the part where God killed something to give you a skin, that's my question.
Okay.
No,
so when you, again, if you apply this to a sacrificial system, when God instructs the killing of a bull to cover your sin, would that be wrong?
no, but that is a situation where he tells you to kill a bull.
Or, well, why would he tell you to kill an animal and to cover your sin?
Okay, tell me that.
Because it's the same picture of atonement, right? The word, what I'm alluding to here, okay, and whether you believe it or not, it's okay. It's not a big thing. Is that when we're dealing with atonement, is that there simply has, as Paul stated, there cannot be any forgiveness of sins without the shedding of blood. If this becomes a foreshadow of something where we make our own covering, as in we try to cover our own shame our best way, and how do we do that?
No, I know it's saying that.
No, what I'm saying, no, not with the fig leaves, is that we're justifying our sin. And when we take a look at the skin covering, being a hide or leather, not that reference of our actual skin, but of hide or leather, if that becomes a picture of shedding of how do I deal with my sin, it's again the picture of, again, an animal becomes that covering. So from where I'm sitting, and again, you guys can use this or not, is that he's setting up the idea of the atonement, right? Paul, like I said, there will be no shedding or there will be no forgiveness of sin unless there is shedding of blood. Something generally dies when you shed its blood. Same in the sacrificial system. Just like Yeshua had to die to become a covering for us. So what I would simply ask you to look for is not so much the, let's not argue about the terminology, let's follow the Hebraic picture. Okay? Just like the covering of the boat uses the same word, but the separation for the ark between water, that which made it watertight, and that which allowed it to be sunk into destruction, was what they called a covering, a kapera, right? And it's that same wordplay or that same picture that says this is the difference between destruction in water, and this is the difference between out. So when God institutes for me, and again, I'm happy if you guys disagree on this, is that when we're getting to the place of, okay, how then do I take your covering or your justification to cover your own nakedness versus my plan to cover your sin? Because this is what he's correcting. Soon as I understood that I was naked, that I was at shame, then I would need rectifying. To rectify that situation, God, for me, talks about a covering. Whether you want to call it skin or whether you want to call it leather. That covering is the picture of atonement. You with me? That's the logic I'm going with. Okay. So in that picture, he's going to say, all right, I'm going to take away your temporary one and I'm going to give you something more permanent, which is again something pointing again to the sacrificial system. A temporary covering, in a sense, the blood of bulls and goats. The more permanent solution, the blood of Christ. Does that make sense? So he's looking at a picture for me as a picture of atonement. Okay, rectifying the situation that they're going on about. All right. So it says, Adonai made God garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. Verse 22, Adonai God said, see, the man has become like one of us, knowing good from evil. Okay? One of what? Us, plural. Okay? So same picture the whole time. Not to prevent his putting out his hand and taking also from the tree of life, eating and living forever. Therefore, Adonai God sent him out to the garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from which he was taken. So he drove the man out. So why did he kick him out of the garden? So he couldn't eat of the tree of life. Doesn't that sort of imply that he should have eaten from the tree of life already? He could have, but does it say that he ever did?
No.
Okay, so now we have an interesting issue. I put before you blessing and life, curse and death. Choose.
I did choose. They chose the first.
He says, and what was the instruction? Do not eat from which tree?
Knowledge.
Did he ever stop them from eating of the tree of life? But it doesn't seem they made that choice. Isn't it interesting? So
I didn't see nothing there.
they didn't make the choice to eat from life.
But maybe they would have just done
And then then he says they would have lived forever. It's an interesting dynamic that we have at play here. So he says,
He says, see, the man has become like one of us. But in the beginning, he said, let's make man.
there's a difference. Well, he finishes that statement. He has become like one of us, knowing
Good from evil.
good and evil. So he's coming to the point. Does God understand the consequences of sin? Yeah, did Adam. Right. So now all of a sudden we're starting to get an understanding that we probably weren't able to deal with. Okay? When he says, I'm going to create you in my image, I want you to understand that I'm your counterpart. It's a completely different function. It's the same way where God comes up to you and he says, I'm Adonai. And then in the next verse he says, I'm Elohim. They both mean something similar in title-wise, but they're different. Why? So why is he my Adonai or is he my Elohim? Which one is he? All about relationship to how it impacts me. Right. So it's like my relation to him. Okay. So he says, listen, lest they eat of the tree of life and living forever. So what's the problem now? If they eat of it and they stay in this fallen state forever, look at your father's heart. You're in a fallen state. I do not want you broken like this forever. So to redeem you, I have to kick you out of God. Okay? So he says, he drove the man out and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden the Kruvim or the cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned in every direction to guard the way of the tree of life. So why does he kick them out of the east? Why is that important? Or where does that come up again?
But yes, synonymous with judgment.
Hmm?
Sure, it comes
Sure
back
comes
with
the
flaming
eastern
sword,
gate.
sword coming out of his mouth, a flaming sword.
If you were to draw for me a picture of the tabernacle, it's set up with its door always facing the east. Why?
The sun.
Oh, it's with the sun.
That you into the
So basically, here's the interesting picture, right? So if I was kicked out towards the east of the gate of Eden, and I put something here, cherubim blocking the route. When you look at the design in its very self, that little curtain over there has got cherubim on it. So when I start coming back, it's type of angel, a cherub, yeah, cherubim. Okay, so then we'll see the design of them, and then you'll see angels or a depiction thereof on that very entrance to the tabernacle. And as I come closer and closer and closer, the altar, animal sacrifice, the laver, the cleansing, coming up into this section. Sorry, I'm drawing upside down. This is not normal. Where we have a menorah here, the light, table of showbread, and over here is the incense altar, as in prayer, to come all the way into the presence of God in the Holy of Holies. Okay, so again, I will submit to you that the design of where God kicks them out is the same way He wants to bring you back in. You with me? So basically, He's saying, is like, when you sinned, you got kicked out the garden. The way back to me is this way.
Me too.
Teshuvah, number one. Get past the cherub. How do you get past the cherub?
reborn.
Well, you first have to. What do we generally do when we come into when the entrance?
You have to wash and clean yourself.
What do you do at the entrance? You're standing there with a bull.
What did you say?
What do you do at the entrance?
Entrance.
You press your sins onto the ball for forgiveness, right?
Right. Okay. If we're dealing with a sin issue, I would have to confess my sins and go, this is now my sins pressed on this animal, and then the blood will be taken and splashed on the altar, depending on where it should be. It should be dealt with here. Correct? Then perhaps I go through the laver. This is about washing. So think about it from a Passover point of view. There was an offering, blood on the doorpost. Something had to die. A sheep, for that blood to cover the door, to go to the Red Sea, to be able to get closer and closer and closer to the mountain. Make sense? Same picture. It's all about that reconciliation reality. How do I bring you back?
And when the high priest did it before Yeshua came, now we can go to the Holy of Holies, obviously, because of Yeshua. But before, the high priest could only, you did the sin, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing, then who actually slaughtered it? The high priest did.
Levites.
Levi.
Slaughtered the animal where? What are you talking about? Yom Kippur?
At the before you never went all the way through. You
No.
didn't go all the way through.
Well, even
Only the high priest could.
yeah, and you would have
Where you stopped, like
there.
you did that, and then the high priest did the rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was again setting up the idea that someone has to come in and carry the blood all the way into the Holy of Holies. Right? And again, if I look towards Yeshua, then I understand that he would be able to carry that blood, knowing that this is the work that he needs to do. Now, all of these pictures point back to, again, this is a fallen creation. How do I get you back home? How then do I deal with your sin, your worship? How do I deal with your uncleanliness? How do I get you back into the very presence of God where you walk with him in the cool of the day? All of those things are just, again, understanding this just points you back to Genesis.
Is the outer court, everything outside of that?
No, the outer court is actually here,
Is that there?
where the brazen altar was and the laver was.
So that there you could enter with your offering.
No, the closest you got was there.
So yeah?
Closest you got was the door. When we get closer to Sukkot, or unless you guys want to, you can just YouTube the Mishkan or the tabernacle. It's a pretty surreal picture when you're standing in a replica like that, because first of all you realize it's not very big, and if I'm sitting over the door, my party with the thing is we're pressing here, and by faith I have to let this animal go, trusting that forgiveness or whatever the point of the offering is going to take place. I have to trust that God is going to accept it and understand my heart. This whole thing was a faith-based reality, right? And when you're getting over there, for me as a person that was not a Levite would only get to a point. For me that wasn't a son of Aaron directly, they wouldn't even get into the holy place. And only Aaron, once a year on Yom Kippur, would be able to get into the Holy of Holies.
Then they tie something around his ankle.
Well, that's a traditional element. But I can understand why they say that they would do that, is because if he was struck down like Nadav and Avihu, then we can pull him out because he would have defiled the entire tent.
How did it work practically?
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of families, a lot of sacrifices had to be made. Did each camp get a turn? Monday is your turn, and you.
No, that's the thing. You had a list of offerings that could take place that were taking place every day. Okay, and then it was like for Shabbat, so there was a morning and an afternoon offering. There was a specific for Shabbat offering, a specific for feast. If you do, besides the feasts and that, if you were to look at the 5 different types of offerings that you could take place, those you could do at any time. So if any person wanted to do a peace offering because they wanted to go sit and have a meal with God, they could.
Yeah, but it wasn't a very big space. So
No.
practically, how do you?
Well, practically, if I only have 7 sheep and I decide I want to go sacrifice one because I want to go have a meal with Abba, how often do you think I want to do that? How often do you think I can afford to? Right?
When you're talking about the meal there, so say you want to go and have a meal with Yeshua, right? You go to the priest, right?
Yeah.
When would the food come up?
After they'd have to slaughter it, put the blood in the right place, cut up the animal in the right place, wash everything, take out what's not supposed.
And then you sit down and eat.
Yeah, you would have your meal outside.
You have your meal outside.
He would have his side inside, and a section of that would be burnt up for God.
So you'd have to bring out your bit of meat.
Yeah, that's why you have to make sure you were clean before you went to that position and was in a position of in a clean state, because if I eat it in an unclean state, it says that I get cut off.
This is like almost on Georgina's point here. Like, I mean, what if like 7 different families want to come up and decide they want a meal? The priest's gonna have to.
Well, you have more than one Levite on duty. Remember, there were.
They could all do that, but unfortunately, taking it to.
Well, look, it's only certain offerings allowed you to go into the holy place.
Okay.
Only one offering allowed you to go into the Holy of Holies.
Oh, okay.
All right?
So
And
the other ones,
it's pretty much outer court, blood on the base of the altar, around the base of the altar. We'll discuss that a little bit with the destruction, with the death of Abel. And then how that gets poured into all 4 corners, going down into the dust and so on. And then from there it would be either burnt up, eaten, or shed.
Only Yom Kippur did they go.
So Holy of Holies, yeah.
And at the beginning, when I first came to Turin, I thought, oh, well, I don't really need to know about all that stuff because that doesn't happen anymore. But it's going to happen again in the 1,000 years.
In the 1,000-year reign, yeah.
In the 1,000-year reign, where everybody's going to go up to the
Look, we're actually going through it, but like the Plet peeps are going through the study, actually going through Leviticus now. And I can tell you those first 7 chapters are not easy reading.
No, after
We had one guy. He was just like, let me just tell you that Leviticus is not my favorite book. It says that it happens. You hear people, they go, not just that, they go, okay, we have to. You go through a whole list of things and they're completely detached from the situation. But if you were a Levite, you needed to pay a lot of attention, right?
Yeah, you definitely did because you had to do it all the right way.
Many people start reading the Bible and they say, I'm going to read through the whole thing. And then once they get to Leviticus, they kind of stop, close the book, and then they go, okay, now we're done.
That was me.
Right. And like, I'm never going to understand this. The reality is you need to understand that this becomes prophetic foreshadows, number one, of Christ. So we better understand it. Secondly, we have to understand Father's heart. And thirdly, we have to understand how much faith you would have to be able to go through with something like that. There was a cost involved. I had to believe. I had to go, Father, please accept this. And when you apply that to the cross, you're believing in a sacrifice you never saw. You're believing in the blood ascending into a place you've never been.
Okay, then the other question is, if Yeshua has already done that ultimate sacrifice for us, why then in the 1,000-year reign are we going to go back to that?
Because we have a misconception of, again, and I'm not talking about the sin and guilt and trespass offering. That's something that I don't think will be included because Yeshua is your ultimate sin sacrifice. But we have a misconception of what an offering system is about. It's worship. If I wanted to do a shalmim or a peace offering, it was an act of worship. Nothing less, nothing more. It was me about coming to sit and break bread with God. Thanksgiving offering, first fruits. There are so many of these things where we go, this is such an amazing thing. I can share this with God, except now God's going to be sitting on the throne.
Like you had to make a sacrifice when every child was born, like when your firstborn son was born, and then so much that for a son, that for a daughter.
No, that's not an offering, but an act of redemption. The reason you had to redeem them was because of the Exodus story, the firstborn. Right? So there's processes in it that you're going to be pointing to Christ, but you must understand that did it cost Johan and them anything to slaughter a lamb so that you guys could all feast on Passover?
Yes.
It cost them. Was it a bloodless gift?
No.
No. Did it take time to prepare it?
Yes.
Did you guys enjoy it?
Yes.
Okay. Did you enjoy his sacrifice?
He said,
Okay. What I'm pointing at is that the person that comes in and he says, listen, I want to worship God, you realize it's going to cost me something. Yeshua will say it this way, count the cost of, take up your cross, count the cost of discipleship. Are you going to measure what it means to follow me? Are you going to measure to live a life of worship? Or are you just going to sit there and flap your gums?
Well, the truth is we're not making enough sacrifice with our walks today in generally, and so they really genuinely need to sacrifice.
And it points to something that's going to go, okay, you know what? I know this is going to cost me something, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know that I'm going to have to walk 3 days to go share a meal with God, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know that this is probably, in a worldly sense, something that a lot of people won't understand, but I'm going to do it anyway. And we go through that process of, we need to understand worship the way he instituted worship. Not just about covering an atonement, but what does that look like for a disciple? For me to go up and go, I'm completely dedicated to God, which is what a burnt offering symbolizes. For me as a disciple, I need to be so completely burnt up that I get, or dedicated to the point where I go, there's nothing left of me. And we say things like that all the time, but we don't know where we got it from. Right? All of these things point to the heart condition of the person offering and God who instituted this so that you can better understand Him, so that you can better understand your relationship. If we'll get lost in what gets to be cut away and what needs to be put there and all the rest of it, then we also don't fully understand how far God had to go to reconcile us to Him. We brought the sin in. He created the tabernacle, got all the pieces put together so that He can use part of His creation to cover our muck. How far does He go to get me to the place where I actually can walk up to Him and go, you know what, Father, it's actually all about you?
He did this all so that he could be the bridegroom and we're the bride, and he's coming back for his bride. But now I've heard it argued that at a wedding there can only be one bride.
Mm-hmm.
So we as a body are not all going to be the bride. Some
Yeah.
are going to be waiters, some are going to be pouring the wine, some are going to be, I don't know. You remember that?
Physical presentation. I think it's all.
No, well, she's saying is that some people are getting it right and some people are getting it wrong. So therefore, if you get it right, you're the bride. If you're not, so if you.
My son, my son is.
Yeah. Look, if we're going to go down that road, I'm going to be here till 5 o'clock.
I just said a lot. My son said, "What do you mean? Are you just telling me what we're going to be? Because he's obviously being a male. We're going to be Yeshua's bride. What are you talking about?" Trying to explain to him that there's a lot of parables in scripture.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
a lot of
parable.
men in our dresses.
Well, let's close on that point before we go down that rabbit hole, and then we're going to have to help Gary back to the car. Father, we just want to thank you again for this time. Father, we thank you for your word. Father, as we just go and we unpack it, Father, always I pray that again it would be heart knowledge, Father, that it would be transformed lives, that we would look at your text, Father, and not just seek to understand it from our mind's point of view, Father, but that you would transform us through it. Father, we thank you then, and we acknowledge the fact that we were the ones that broke everything, Father, that we are the ones that bring sin in. And Father, that you so graciously, through your love, make a way back, Father, so that we may be reconciled to you, that we may have relationship with you, Father, that we may be, or have that gift of Emmanuel, that you would dwell with us, Father. And we just pray that as we go out this week, Father, that we would have that gift, the Ruach HaKodesh, Father, the Holy Spirit dwelling in us, so that we can see that the start of the fulfillment of that prophecy, Father, that we would understand that you in us, Father, has always been the heart condition, and we would walk in that. And we just want to thank you for that blessing, Father. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And I read in this, if not preparing to